Well, here we are. The season is over, and we've already had some big announcements on players that, are no longer going to be playing baseball next year. Some of them doing it in interesting ways, like Trevor May doing it on his Twitch stream, announcing that he's retiring. But there's a lot of different guys that are going to be retiring.
Miguel Cabrera did his farewell tour, and that was very nice. And I guess Wainwright kind of did the same thing, although not as much as Miggy.
Right. I don't think Wainwright was quite the Yachty or Miggy level of beloved to get the same. And he's also a pitcher.
Right, and Mickey's a Hall of Famer, and Wainwright we don't think is.
Right.
We think he just falls a little bit short. But just today, I saw that the Reds declined to pick up Joey Votto's option. I think it was a $7 million option, but they basically said we think he won't get a chance to play here, which is probably true because the Reds are up and coming team.
Yeah.
And so, and this has to do with another podcast that I've been trying. I'll tell you about this in a moment. Does he leave the Reds and go play for another team because he wants to play so much, and he's got some milestones that he could reach.
Right, and he's a guy that I think has played postseason baseball. He's got to have played a postseason baseball.
He has played postseason baseball, but then the Reds had like a wild card game against the Mets or something like that.
I could see him going and signing with some team on a veteran, a team like the Orioles or something could go and sign him for pretty cheap as a left-handed bat in that lineup or something. I could see him doing something like that. I could also see him retiring.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy, a lot like a guy who hasn't announced his retirement, so I don't want to cast rumors here or anything like that. But Zach Greinke, I don't think Zach Greinke is going to have a farewell tour. When he's done, he's going to go, you know what? I don't feel like playing anymore.
You might not even say anything. We might just figure it out.
What happened to Zach? Oh, I don't know.
He just didn't show up at spring training this year. I guess he's done.
So you mentioned Trevor May, and also this week Nelson Cruz retired, and he of the 464 career home runs.
I know, that's an impressive number.
So if he had 36 more home runs, would that make him a better candidate for Cooperstown, or is it these days it doesn't matter as much?
I think if he had 500 home runs, you would at least have to talk about him a little bit more than he will get talked about. He will just be a nice story. I don't think anybody will give him any serious Hall of Fame consideration. If he had 500 home runs, you would at least have to put him in the conversation.
Now, he did come up with some, accusations.
Nothing that ever
stuck. He really was a DH for most of his career, and I guess in my mind, unless your name is Edgar Martinez,
you got to make
it as a pure
David
DH,
Ortiz.
Or David Ortiz. That's an excellent point. It's really hard. So love the career of Nelly Cruz. Pretty good chance he's going to be a manager. I think people have talked a lot about. Yeah, he's got the bug. He's got the personality.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That people love him. He's energy. Who was it saying? Cameron Maben was saying yesterday on the morning show on the leadoff spot, I should say, that he was the hardest working player. The guy worked out 6 days a week, lifting weights and do that. He's in his 40s now, and he's playing. So Nelson Cruz, great career. Really liked the player, and I think he retired at the right time.
Now he gets to go out, feeling good.
The other retirement we heard about earlier, we talked about it already on an earlier podcast, was Steven Strasburg.
Yes.
So very sad, end to
a
top
career. Pitcher for a long time. He got that World Series with the Nationals, and he was just the kind of guy that unfortunately was hurt a little bit too much to fully realize his talent.
So how would you compare his career to Jacob deGrom? He won a World Series, and he was a primary pitcher. So did deGrom. You're right, he did. Although he didn't throw a pitch.
He got a World Series ring, and that's the big.
And Strasburg was Studley in that World Series in 2019.
But deGrom's got Cy Youngs. Multiple.
Yes, I don't think Strasburg has any.
He might have one.
But he did, as a pitcher who was felled by injury, that stopped his career from being long enough to have a legitimate shot at the Hall of Fame.
Strasburg cost himself at having a legitimate Hall of Fame the same way Jake cost him that and a shot at being considered one of the all-time greats.
Right. Neither of those things are going to happen.
Right.
In terms of them being in the Hall of Fame, it would appear now. I would say that about Jake, too. I don't see it happening.
Unless somehow deGrom has an completely unlikely, like one of 3 or 4 unbelievable seasons after he comes back, which just you can't possibly.
It seems hard. And one of his former teammates, who also had Hall of Fame aspirations for about 20 minutes, and Matt Harvey, he has retired as well. And he probably should have done that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he got bad, and he got bad fast.
Yeah, and I was really, sad to hear that, the injury obviously really messed him up, but he messed himself up a little bit too.
A little bit too much partying.
Yeah.
A little bit. When we started hearing too much about his nightlife, that was a sign that things were not all well. Because it's just like, wait a second, why are we hearing about him dating these supermodels and actresses and going out and getting drunk at clubs?
Man, he was good, though.
He was really good.
When he was good, he was really good, but not long enough. So good luck to Matt Harvey. So other guys that retired before the season, and I had to go back, and there's a site, recent retirements, and I think it's worth checking out if you want to, on the baseballcube.com. Annabelle Sanchez, you remember him as a pitcher in the National League for a long time. Darren O'Day, who had some really good years with the Royals, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
Yeah. Lorenzo Cain retired. We saw that. And another guy who kind of hurt our Mets a little bit at the worst possible time. Really good player.
Yeah.
Really good player. Dexter Fowler retired.
Who had like one or two.
Yeah. I looked at his career. I thought, man, I thought he was better.
But there was like one or two seasons where he was really good, and that was about it.
But good player. Sergio Romo, the Giant closer. Game. Yes, and he actually, I guess, hadn't pitched in a year or two, and he put a Giant uniform on, and this happens occasionally. It also happened with Adam Jones, so he hadn't played Adam Jones like Sergio in 4 years in the major leagues. He went to Japan, he played there, and all this stuff. So he comes back in and he puts in order. So now he can't be voted on for the Hall of Fame for another 5 years.
Or it wasn't
not that either one of them have anything to worry about. Adam Jones is a far better player, I think, than Sergio Romo, and I really like that guy too. I really is a much better player than I realized when you look at his career stats. Jason Kipnis,
but that one monster season for the
Cleveland,
Twins. I think it was Twins.
Oh, okay,
he was on that 2013 Twins team that had like 5 guys that hit 40.
I always think of him as a Cleveland player. It's interesting. I don't know why I have that. And he was very good early in his career. Jake McGee had a much longer career.
No idea. Who
he pitched for one of Colorado's, but has a really good career. And he pitched for the Rockies and the Giants. And I'm like, wow, this guy pitched like 12 years in the major leagues, and you barely know his name, right?
Yeah, no idea. Right? It sounds like an MLB The Show creative player.
No, he's a real player. And the Met fans will not lament the retirement of Jordan Yamamoto, who
he pitched for them for like 4 or 5 games.
And he retired like Trevor May, really young. Like I don't think he was 30 when he retired. So some guys just figure it out. Like, you know what,
Jordan Yamamoto,
this ain't for me. You'll be happy to know that finally, at long last, Bartolo Colon has retired.
Isn't he just signed to play baseball in the Saudi league?
Well, that doesn't count. That doesn't count. And so, wait, hasn't Bartolo been retired for like 5 years? So now he's finally retiring. There's a guy also who's not a Hall of Fame player, but he's an almost guy.
He'll be a guy that'll get an amazing 30 for 30.
Yeah, I love Bartolo. Our favorite Daniel Murphy retired this year after I don't want to say an aborted comeback, trying to come up through the Long Island Ducks in single A ball.
I think he just wanted to keep playing baseball.
I like that about him. He really didn't want to go out that way. He said he gave it a shot, and then he went, no.
Joey Bats retired.
Yeah, it's like wasn't he retired too?
And he's a guy that he would be a guy that's in the Hall of Very Good. He's got a lot of really good seasons, but then there's a lot of early in his career where he did nothing.
Did Joey Batista? I'm not looking at his BR page. Did he bat 250 for his career? I don't think so.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't. And then batting averages and everything, but. If you're going to be in the Hall of Fame, it does mean something. Cole Hamels retired, and again, I think he was trying to come back and finally said...
We thought he was shot like 3 years ago.
Right. These guys, but they just retired this season.
Right.
I only noted Craig Stammen because I remember his name, and he pitched 9 years in the major leagues. I'm thinking, wow, he missed the 10th year to get his pension.
I don't remember his name.
And Ryan Goins, Stammen played 12 years. Ryan Goins played 9 years in the major leagues. And again, a name I heard one time. Right. I couldn't tell you what position he played. He was a pitcher, actually. And he
I would have gotten that right.
What he did is he went to the minor leagues after 9 years in the major leagues and toiled around there for 2 years. Didn't work out and then he retired.
I have such respect.
I have such respect for that.
Not get that pension.
I mean, just trying. You don't want to give it up. You want to do that. I'm impressed with a guy who does that.
I think we're going to get some more retirements in this coming off season. I don't think we're done quite yet. I think that guys like...
Well, we're going to cast aspersions now because these guys haven't announced retirements, but they could could retire.
Right, and we're more just talking about likely candidates like Evan Longoria.
You went to the World Series?
I think both for him, because he's just going to sit on the bench next year if he goes back and plays for the Diamondbacks again. So I think he'll be done.
And Evan Longoria isn't going to play and get the extra stats he needs to be a Hall of Famer because he's not that far away.
But he's far enough
away that he's not going to get it by playing 40 games a year and being a twice a week third baseman. Andrew McCutchen, not retiring, got his 2,000th hit this year, went back to the Pirates, had a nice year helping them. How much more?
He might do his farewell tour next year with that Pirates team.
We talked about Zach Greinke, obviously, already hasn't announced retirement, so but he doesn't have a contract either. So it'll be interesting to see.
He was bad this year, so it's hard for me to believe he's going to get one.
Same could be said for Johnny Cueto and Corey Kluber.
Right. Well, Kluber, I feel like hasn't been in the
No, he was like pitching this year. He
really?
Pitched,
who?
I think he pitched for Tampa.
Really?
And then he got hurt or didn't finish the season. Charlie Blackmon is
the ancient one.
75 years old now, so you think he might retire? No, I don't know. The beard makes him look like he's 75 years old. Yeah, he can hit. He's a guy, I hate to say it, could you see him like the Mets decide?
I hope
not too, but I could see it. I don't know why I could see it. The guys.
That's because you can see because you've been talking about that move for seasons.
He's a professional,
and so you'd finally get him, and it would vindicate you that all your previous takes that they should go get him.
Another guy that has had a long career and a better career than he came up and did very well at the beginning, but Elvis Andrus, he's got some like big time stats. For a middle infielder with lots of stolen bases, I'm just saying. So he's at the end of his career.
That's a guy that played a lot of seasons.
Yeah. Well, right. So a compiler, you're trying to say, yeah. But a nice career.
Like the same way Mark Melancon had some really good seasons as a closer, but I mean he was just a guy that had some good seasons as a closer in Major League Baseball.
And it must be hard in Melancon's case. He's got an injury. He finished the season with the Diamondbacks on the IL. They probably could have used him, and if he was healthy. And I think when you're injured at the end of your career, it must be that much harder to just hang it up and say, I just want to see if I can get back.
Right, because you already can tell you're diminished in a way, and given your age, it's like, okay, wait a second, if I can't get 100% of what I have left, I'm just not able to compete.
Mm-hmm. I saw another guy whose name we had him on the Mets this year, and then they traded him to Miami, and he just did not pitch well for Miami. David Robertson. Now he's also 38, 39 years old, so that's the only reason you bring him up in a retirement. I don't think he'll retire because I think he pitched so well for the Mets this year. Certainly,
somebody will give him a chance.
But he did not pitch well for Miami, and that hurt their chances. I think at the end of the year is that he didn't pitch well.
But it didn't help them in the postseason.
No, it would have been a better thing. Rich Hill, he of the 44 years old.
He just needs to keep pitching so he could eventually have pitched for like half the teams in Major League
I think he's
Baseball.
one of those immaculate good guys who's like almost at like 12 or something like that.
And you'll get and he'll be a good one to pick because there'll be some wacky connections you can make with him. It'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot Rich Hill played for both of those two teams.
I thought Brandon Belt, and we watched Brandon Belt home run at Citi Field to beat the Mets when the Blue Jays were in town this summer. But he actually said in August that he was going to evaluate where he was in terms of continuing to play.
We're not casting aspersions. He himself
he's saying that. That doesn't mean he's gone. I guess it'll depend on what kind of a contract and who gives it to him.
I think it also depends on like what you're looking at in terms of getting playing time. If the only because you might get offers from teams, but if all the teams are like, yeah, you'll be a 30-40 game player who gets in at bat, pinch hit at bat here or there, or when we need to give a guy a blow. There's probably a lot of older players that are like, you know what, it's not worth it to be away from my family for the majority of the year to not play baseball.
Well, the guy you played against, who was from up the street here in Connecticut, he was also not tendered a contract by the Reds today, Kurt Casale.
Okay.
And so he's at that point in his career going, okay, I'm in my 30s. I've been a backup catcher for like 11 years. Good for him, man.
I got a pension.
I got a pension now. So do I pack it in? Do I go to find a job someplace else?
And if somebody will give him a contract, maybe he'll take it.
Then there's a lot of guys like that, right? Tomas Nido never found another job after the Mets,
It's just the reality of being the 25th guy on a 26-man roster.
And does Charlie Morton try it again at age 40 or 41 to come back with the Braves? He was injured, obviously finished the season on the IL.
I think the Braves will. I think he will try because that team was so good. If he can come back and be good for them, they'll try and give it one more road.
The guy's an amazing guy in that respect. So I would not be surprised either if he tried again, because I think he was good when he was pitching before he got injured. I have a few guys that are thinking about it, and maybe that's just because we watched the way they pitched at the end of the season in the playoffs. And Kimbrel would be at the top of that list for me. Going, man, you had trouble getting anybody. I don't think he's going to retire.
Right, and like Aroldis Chapman might not retire, but he probably should.
The guy's can still throw 102 miles an hour. There's no way he's retiring.
Right, but he can't get anybody out.
And he can't get anybody out. And they both have like exactly the same amount of career saves. Kimbrel, which is kind of weird. They're going to kind of go together, and maybe they should retire in the same year. Kershaw just came up with a a surprising shoulder injury.
Right, but he said he's coming back
in the middle of next year. Boy, and shoulder injuries at this point in the career, that's going to be a hard thing to come back from.
True.
And I don't know why. I don't know, other than the Dodgers will be good. Him coming in late in the season,
because he doesn't
if he's healthy,
right? Because he doesn't want to be done yet, and he was still good this year. So I think if he comes back from this injury and is bad, then he might just quietly retire.
And I thought about a guy who Buck Showalter and the Mets really liked a lot, Tommy Hunter, who pitched, again, another 11 years in the major leagues. He hasn't retired, but if Buck Showalter's not around to give him a job,
he might be forced into retirement.
Buck Showalter might get another job. They're talking about that. He could
also retire.
So Terry Francona and Dusty Baker, we talked about managers retiring this year. And Buck Showalter might think about retirement as a manager. But what about Bruce Bochy? I mean, you watched him walk out to the mound. It took him a while to get there. He didn't look too good.
He could ride off into the sunset.
Right? Wouldn't that be the thing to do at this point? Going, I did.
And he's kind of done that.
I've done all I can do for you. I came in and won, and I was going to do something on like managers that came in and won the World Series in their first year. So Lou Piniella was hired in 1989 after the Pete Rose debacle at the end there. The Reds won the World Series in 1990, his first year. Okay, and then when Buck Showalter was managing the Diamondbacks, they fired him. They hired this Bob Brenly out of the television booth, and they won the World Series. And he was a terrible manager. And I don't know how they did. They just were a good team, and they had Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling.
Right, that was enough to
that
get
goes
you
a long way
Series.
to helping to win. So
two Hall of Fame starters. You're probably going to get one season.
And like you said, there probably will be some more retirements that we'll hear about. And there appear to be things that happen at the beginning of the year before spring training. Guy doesn't get an invitation.
Right, or guy just looks at how
doesn't feel good.
Right, he just feels out his body thinking, I don't want to go through this for a whole nother season. That happens to a lot of guys.
And I don't think next year I can't think of like players that are going to be on their farewell tour right now next year, unless guys like Greinke and Votto and all that decide to play and say this is going to be our last season.
Right, and the fact that Votto didn't get a contract from the Reds, or he at least they didn't pick up his option, so they have to re-sign him. But like that's the thing, unless he signs there, he's not doing a farewell tour.
Yeah. I don't know where he goes. I don't know what kind of place. He's such a great guy to have around. Apparently, his teammates love him. So
he's a funny guy.
Right. Oh, he started doing some writing, and he did a great piece on Substack.
I would not be surprised to see him in the booth.
I don't think he has the patience for that kind of stuff because he's too. But although he did a great routine with Cruz Russo when he kind of.
Well, I mean, like you wouldn't have thought Keith had the patience for the booth.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And we're going to go see one of Keith's booth mates tomorrow. Ron Darling is going to be doing something with Kelly Ann Throop down here. So we're going to get to hopefully meet Ron and ask him some really tough questions.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll see who retires this year. But quite a list of players, I think, that are going to be playing next year that we all become very familiar with.
And we should get some exciting, news coming out now that the offseason is actually getting underway.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe some managers will be hired. I think Craig Cancel has to go first.
And then the dominoes will fall.
Everything can happen afterwards.